Harrison Price from Wall Center, a presentation of the Applewood Auto Group. And S versus P continues in Blake's absence because P stands for Paterson too. So
it works.
Welcome to the ring. Welcome back to the ring. You'll remember this segment from our old radio days. We called it Take 5 Thursday back then.
I thought maybe Matt got relegated. He was facing some new competition here. But then I thought, no, Jeff wouldn't be in the relegation.
No,
teams.
Absolutely not.
So
He's
maybe
Premier
been
League
moved up
here.
a class, yeah.
Oh, well, maybe after getting a second victory of the season last week over Blake, we debated, do they need another backup goaltender? I won 73-27. That's percentages on Twitter, and 40-18. Just a demolition on YouTube. Thank you, YouTube.
No wonder he needed a week off.
Mm-hmm. So I'm up to 2-5-2 against Blake all season long. This is non-conference here. Today's question, can the Canucks contend in the next 3 years? And S versus P is a presentation of LiUNA 1611, BC's Laborers Union. They have contractors looking for their members to hire today. Check out 1611.ca. LiUNA 1611 has your back. I will be arguing yes, the Canucks can contend in the next 3 years. Jeff will be arguing no. 2 minutes per argument. And as always, we request of our voters, listen to the argument, decide and vote who made a better one. We're not asking for your opinion on this matter, so we ask that you check your personal preferences, biases at the door and vote solely on the crux of the argument. Now, 2 minutes each, Jeff, and I'm going to give you the option if you want to go first or second as a guest here. We are welcoming and try to be good hosts to our out-of-conference opponents.
I'm going to take the ball and we're going to score.
Okay.
Now, just so we lay the...
I hope it turns out for me as it did for Matt Hasselbeck and the Seahawks.
Let's just lay the groundwork
game
here that contend equals a conference final appearance.
Right. Look, if you make it to the conference final, you are a contender.
Final four.
At least that year. The Stanley Cup finalists typically always come from the top 5 to 10 teams in the league standings, and those are the teams that tend to populate conference finals. You occasionally get a team that wins a couple of rounds from beyond that line, but more often than not, if you're not in the top 5, 10 teams in the league, you're not really a true contender.
We're not talking the Minnesota Wild here, who consistently make the playoffs, but
exactly.
never really.
We're talking about a team
level
that has that has a case that they can win a couple of rounds in the playoffs. So I'll turn it over to mediator Sass here to put you on the clock, Mr. Paterson.
All right, Jeff. Are you ready for your big debut?
I am
on S versus
ready.
P.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, your 2 minutes.
Let's not call it a debut here. He's not a raw rookie or anything like that. He's been in the
previous.
He's been in the
formats,
octagon before.
but this particular version. Okay, your 2 minutes starts now.
All right, so this organization that has competed in the playoffs once in the past 8 years is suddenly going to become a postseason powerhouse? Look, there's a progression to this. You have to make the playoffs first and foremost, and then so much of it's about matchups. Ask the LA Kings how that has worked for them the past 2 seasons. The Kings are miles ahead of the Canucks on their competitive curve, and they got better with the addition of Pierre-Luc Dubois this offseason, but part of the reason they made the play for PLD is because they've run into Connor McDavid, the Edmonton Oilers, the league's best power play in each of the last 2 playoff seasons, and that's where the Kings' playoff dreams have died in round number 1. Look at the Toronto Maple Leafs, all of those years of crushing it in the regular season, only to run into other really good teams. And then finally this year they broke through, as much as getting out of the first round can be called a breakthrough, but their best playoff run in 2 decades amounted to 1 playoff round victory this spring. Guess what? Playoff success is hard. There were 4 upsets in this year's playoffs. 4 times the lower seed beat the higher seed, and the Florida Panthers accounted for 3 of those occasions. So the odds of advancing deep into the playoffs are considerably better for teams that finish higher in the standings, and right now, we're talking about the Canucks just scraping into the playoffs. Sure, Seattle ousted the defending Stanley Cup champion Colorado Avalanche, so upsets do happen. The Kraken then got bounced in the next round by Dallas. So, by your definition, that doesn't qualify as any kind of lengthy playoff run, even though they did play 14 playoff games this spring. And that brings us right back to the Canucks. Better on paper for next season, sure, but not a guaranteed playoff team by any stretch. So, they've got to get to the postseason first and then find a way to win a couple of rounds in one of the next 3 seasons. Boy, in the era of McDavid and McKinnon and those Vegas Golden Knights as obstacles in their way, I just don't see it happening in the timeline that you've laid out for them.
Boom.
Wow, right to the buzzer. See, I told you he's been in the arena before. He knew exactly what 2 minutes on his screen would look like. To the letter, to the syllable.
I
Well
may
done,
or
Jeff.
may not have granted him a couple extra seconds there because
gotta
the
work the
buzzer,
clock.
the pod on
Once
the board
again.
wasn't teed up.
Once again, the bench is against me in this segment. All right.
Okay, Matt, are you ready for your 2?
Indeed.
All right, it starts right now.
Look, long way off this year. I will admit that. But who knows what the Canucks or the West will look like over the next 3 years. Will Connor McDavid want out of Edmonton if they continue to fail to make the Cup final? How capped out are Colorado and Vegas going to be paying all these stars? And those young teams with talent, Kings, Kraken, how many years is it going to take them to launch? Look, the Canucks, or do they launch? The Canucks have the most important pieces. They have the number 1 centerman, the number 1 defenseman, the number 1 goaltender. Teams that go 3 for 3 in those categories tend to find themselves competing at some point over the players' primes. And these players are still in their primes. Another couple of years gives their existing talent, be it Podkolzin and Holdglander, a chance to develop alongside their incoming talent, Wielander and Lekkerimaki. This management group has not tied itself to bad long-term contracts for middling players, so they'll even have cap space by the time Myers and Besser come off the books, and they do have a proven architect at the top here. Let's remember, Jim Rutherford has fashioned Stanley Cup teams in Carolina and in Pittsburgh. Look, I'm not going to put the mortgage on the Vancouver Canucks contending by 25-26, but just listen to that. 25-26, that's a long way off. Much can happen between now and then. But there's still a ways to go. And this last decade, has brought a lot of scar tissue. Of that, there's no doubt. But could they be a top 5 to 10 NHL team in 2-3 years' time? Get into that territory from where Cup champions, finalists, conference finalists come from? Yeah, I'm not going to outright reject that. So, yes, they can contend over the next 3 years. Keyword being can.
Again, right at the buzzer.
Right at the buzzer.
And again, I didn't have the pod up, so no sound effect. I'm slacking today.
Boy,
jeez.
you have to have a
Must be
word here with
Friday.
mediator Sass. Can we demote you any lower than mediator for this exercise? You just going to operate the clock going forward?
Be the little
Backbench.
All right.
paralegal running the papers around in the courtroom. Here.
Now, of course, we need you to vote, whether that's on Twitter, whether that's on YouTube. And in fact, if you are watching on YouTube or Twitter, ask you to subscribe on YouTube, follow on Twitter, and of course, leave a comment. Thanks for that, Jeff. We're the adversary. Good luck.
Thank you.
This clip brought to you by LiUNA 1611, BC Laborers Union. Check out 1611.ca.